What's going on, YouTube? This is the MMA Encyclopedia, George Brew. I want to say what's up to all the MMA Mayhem listeners. This video is exclusively for you. Since we wouldn't be in studio today, and when I mean we, of course, myself and my esteemed colleague, Mr. Shoot Promo, Kurt Johnson, we just decided that we were each gonna provide you with our reviews and thoughts of this past weekend's MMA events in the UFC on Fox, Alves versus Kampman, and then of course Tate versus Rousey on this past Saturday night. So I'm just gonna basically give you my end of the review, and of course Kurt will be writing an exclusive blog on our website, which is www.thebbsn.com. Make sure you go check it out and check out what Kurt has to say about these two events as well. So without any further ado, let's dig right on in. First event, y'all have to excuse me, I'm kind of off today a little bit, but the first event that I'm going to discuss is the UFC on Fox, Alves versus Kampman. I'm going to talk about the first fight of the night on the main card, which was a middleweight bout that was highly competitive between Court the Crusher McGee and Constantino Philippou. Now, I picked Philippou to win this fight simply because I thought that Philippou's striking would be a little bit more superior, and I thought that his footwork and head movement would cause Court McGee to get frustrated, and it would cause him to walk into jabs or combinations or just any type of strikes that Philippou tried to throw. And as far as the wrestling goes, I know a lot of people were probably betting on Court McGee to win this fight simply because of the wrestling and the pressure that he would probably put on Philippou. But you know, you have to understand, Philippou trains with, you know, elite level grapplers, aka Matt Serra and Chris Weidman and the rest of those guys at the Serra fight team. So I knew that Philippou's takedown defense would be good. I just never knew that it would be that good. No disrespect, but it turns out that it was, and he was able to stuff Court McGee's takedowns, and you know, he was able to you know, make Court McGee I guess move around a lot and chase him around, which he was doing, and you know, he was just really getting the better of Court McGee. I mean, McGee almost completed most of his takedowns, but people forget that Philippou he's a strong guy. I mean, you know, he's got a nice build. So yeah, he used that upper body strength to shield off Court McGee from taking him down and grounding and pounding with the wrestling, and he was able to outstrike him, and he fought a good fight. So congratulations to Philippou. I'm sure Court McGee will be back. I believe that was his first loss ever in the UFC, so of course they're not going to cut him for that. And plus, he did look good in defeat, if that makes any sense. But yeah, you know, Court McGee, he's always a tough out. So like I said, he'll get another fight. I'm not worried about that. But good win for Philippou. Next fight was probably the fight that everybody's going to be talking about, and that of course was the first of the mini flyweight tournament, the new flyweight tournament, I should say, that Dana White and the UFC staff has introduced. And this was a mini tournament to determine two finalists that would compete at a future UFC pay-per-view to determine the UFC's first ever flyweight champion. So for the first fight of this tournament, we had Demetrius Mighty Mouse Johnson going up against Ian Uncle Creepy McCall. Now, much to my surprised. I did not realize that Ian McCall was the #1 flyweight in MMA. I did not know that. So, I kind of underestimated Ian McCall a little bit. I will gladly admit that. And he did show me something. I mean, he's a solid fighter all around. I mean, he's got decent striking, very good wrestling and jiu-jitsu skills. So he did impress me. And I'll admit, Demetrius Johnson, he was in trouble. He did have a tough night. He even had a rough time at one point taking McCall down. And there was a point in the fight where Demetrius Johnson almost got stopped before the time ran out for the next round. So Ian McCall, he is for real. So I will have to think twice next time before I underestimate Ian McCall again. But at the same time, Demetrius Johnson did what he was supposed to do. He used the speed. He showed good striking himself, pretty good wrestling, and I'd probably say he'd won maybe about a good portion of the fight. I won't say it was, a clear decision. You can make a case for McCall, winning that fight, but, that's why Dana White always stresses to his fighters, never let the fight go into the judge's hands, because you never know what can happen. And there's another prime example. So, as a result of that, Demetrius Johnson ends up getting the nod in the fight. I have heard on a couple of websites that there will be a rematch taking place. So apparently Demetrius Johnson cannot relish in this victory for too long, because he's going to have to meet up with this guy again. And who knows what can happen in that contest. So whenever that rematch is announced, you can better believe that both of these guys are going to want to look to end the fight as soon as possible. So keep your eyes peeled for that. But in all, Demetrius Johnson gets the win. Congratulations to him, at least for now. And then the other half of the flyweight tournament bout was Joseph Benavidez taking on Yasuhiro Urushitani. And this was, I'd probably say this wasn't as close as the Johnson fight was. I mean, although Urushitani did show some pretty decent skill in the fight, he was able to hang with Benavidez on the feet for a little bit, but for the most part Benavidez looked good. He was able to get the better of the striking, and he was able to take Urushitani down and almost submitted him in the second round, but luckily for Urushitani, the time ran out, so he wasn't able to get the submission, but it still looked good on the judges' scorecards because it was a submission attempt. I mean, I'm sorry, in the first round. I said the second round because actually what I was about to get to, the second round, Benavidez came back and caught Urushitani with the left hook right on the chops and put him away. So that was actually in the first round where Benavidez almost ended up submitting Urushitani. So in the second round, Benavidez, he's feinting, he's getting on the inside, and just basically using that superior athleticism, and he was just able to make Urushitani commit, and then he caught him right on the jaw, and he finished it off. So Benavidez is really the first clear-cut fighter to advance in this competition. So really, he's the only set contender for the title, because as I just said about Demetrius Johnson and Ian McCall, there's going to be a rematch. So the next contender along with Benavidez has yet to be determined. So we really can't say, even though Demetrius Johnson won the first fight, we really can't say that he's going to advance on and face Benavidez, because there's rumors spreading around that there's going to be a rematch, and I think Dana White even made that a possibility too. So we still got to wait for the results of that. So but Benavidez definitely has earned his spot as a finalist in this tournament, no doubt about that. So whoever wins between Johnson and McCall, is going to have to face Benavidez. So we'll just see what happens there. But nice win for Joseph, though. Nice win. And then the main event, and probably one of the most embarrassing endings to a fight that I've ever seen, especially when you look at how the fight was about to end and then how it did end. It just made you just grab your head and just make you want to smash your television. Seriously, that's how embarrassing and frustrating the ending of the fight was. But before I get to that, of course I'm talking about Thiago Alves, Martin Kampmann. Before I get to the ending of the fight, I want to talk about what went on in the first couple of rounds before I get to what I was just talking about. Okay, so the first couple of rounds, basically, Thiago Alves is having his way with Martin Kampmann. I mean, he's basically ripping him apart on the feet. He showed improved boxing. He was throwing those razor-sharp leg kicks. And he was really giving Martin Kampmann problems. And, I just don't understand why Martin Kampmann in the first few rounds didn't try to take Thiago down to the ground earlier. But, that's just the type of individual that Martin Kampmann is. And I've always said about Martin Kampmann, fights that he could win, he's dumb. And fights that he's supposed to, well, I meant to say the fights that he can win, he's smart. But in the fight that he's supposed to win, he's dumb. But in this case, he was neither smart or dumb. He was just, I don't know what he was in this fight. I don't know what he was thinking. But for the most part, he's up there, striking with Thiago Alves, which is a cardinal sin in the welterweight division for anybody. So anyway, yeah, Martin Kampmann's up there, just basically getting clobbered for 2 rounds. And then just as Thiago Alves was about to put the stamp down on the fight, he decides that because he's gotten so much criticism for not using his grappling abilities, that he decides he wants to take Martin Kampmann down with maybe like 1 second or 90 seconds or something left in the fight. And I'm just like, why, Thiago? You were out striking him. You cut him. He was bleeding like a stuffed pig. And then you want to take him down? Knowing that Martin Kampmann has the ability to submit guys off of his back, let alone submit people in general, and you're just going to dive into that water, huh? Well, when Thiago dove into that water, he certainly did drown. And he drowned bad. Like drowned in the form of a guillotine choke from the mount while he was on his back, which he had no defense for, by the way. There was no way that Thiago was going to buck out of that choke. I mean, I don't care how strong he is. I mean, he could have, brought a forklift to put in between his chest, and Martin Kampmann still wouldn't have let go of that choke. So, I mean, I just don't understand. I just don't understand why Thiago keeps making these rookie-like mistakes. And he's been a seasoned vet in this game for a long time now. I mean, you should have already learned your lesson before. I don't understand. I mean, but anyway, I don't know. But in the end, Martin Kampmann made a surprising comeback and choked out Thiago Alves in the 3rd round. So Martin Kampmann gets the win. Obviously, this is going to catapult him in the rankings. Kind of get him in that top contender circle. With Jake Ellenberger and Carlos Condon and Johnny Hendricks and all these guys. So yeah, man. Martin Kampmann, congratulations to you. You know, even though it wasn't supposed to happen, it did. You know, and Thiago, as far as I'm concerned, I don't know, man. I really don't know. But whatever the case may be, you know, I just hope that, you know, his coaches or somebody involved in Thiago Alves's life, like, really sits down with him and really constructs his career and the decisions that he makes in fights. Because apparently, you know, the guys that he does have around him are not telling him enough. So that would basically be my advice for Thiago. But anyway, that's going to do it for my review of the UFC on Fox, Alves versus Kampmann. And now I will be breaking down the other pay-per-view. Or why do I keep calling this a pay-per-view? I guess because it was a pretty darn good card. It seemed like a pay-per-view, but it was not a pay-per-view. I meant to say the other MMA event that took place Saturday night. And of course, it was Ronda Rousey, Miesha Tate for the women's, what was it, bantamweight title, I believe. Yeah, I think it was bantamweight. But before I get to that, I want to talk about a couple of other fights that happened on that card. They were pretty good fights too. You know, I was surprised at how good these fights were. But first fight I want to talk about right quick was KJ Noons and Josh Thompson. This was kind of like a back and forth type of affair. It was very grinding, very edgy, you know, that type of thing. And you know, I just felt that Josh Thompson coming into this fight would have the advantage, because he did have, well, I wouldn't say he had the striking advantage, but he definitely had the advantage on the mat. So I knew that would come into play. I kind of knew that if he can take KJ Noons out of his strategy, which was basically to keep the fight standing up and, you know, show off his striking, I knew that KJ Noons would be a goner. And that's basically what happened. I mean, Josh Thompson used the wrestling, used the jiu-jitsu, and grounded KJ Noons for most of the fight to a unanimous decision. I mean, KJ Noons had his moments. You know, he caught him with, you know, a couple of grazing shots. You know, maybe like a little, you know, baby hook, like that kind of clipped him, but really didn't wobble him. Like, you know, really just devastatingly wobble him. But you know, he did what he did. But for the most part, this was all Josh the Punk Thompson. So congratulations to him. You know, he had some time off dealing with knee injuries and stuff. So that's another reason why this fight, or this win in this fight, man, I gotta get my thoughts together, y'all. But that was why this fight was so much more impressive for Thompson, because he hadn't been in the ring that in a long time since the well, who was that last guy he fought? Jay-Z, I think it's I forgot his first name. Jay-Z Cavalcante or something like that. I can't pronounce the guy's name. No disrespect to you, dude, whoever you are. But yeah, Thompson really hadn't been in the cage since that fight. So for him to come back after that long layoff and to just completely dominate KJ Noons like he did, awesome. So yeah, congratulations. Next fight was Jacare Souza versus man, what are these guys' names, man? Like, I can't think of these guys' names. Like, this is so disrespectful of me. You know, these guys, you know, these unknown fighters, you know, they got to start getting a better rep, man, so I can remember these guys' names. Golly, do they suck that bad that I can't remember their names? But anyway, Jacare Souza the former Strikeforce middleweight champion, looked good in his fight. We'll just say that. He had a dominant performance. You know, he showcased more of his striking more in this fight. He did use the grappling. The grappling did come into play. You know, he was able to take the opponent down and just basically handle him, you know, with submission attempts and wrestling and all that good stuff. So Jacare put on a great performance, probably one of his better performances since he lost the title to Luke Rockhold. And he was actually able to submit his opponent. I think it was in the 3rd round. He caught him with the arm triangle. So good win for Jacare. Another submission in his belt. So we'll see what happens next for Jacare Souza. Maybe a future rematch with Luke Rockhold, or maybe I don't know, maybe the loser of Rockhold versus Kennedy. I mean, who knows? But be that as it may, next fight we had Scott Smith, the Hands of Stone, taking on now let me see if I can pronounce this guy's name. Arumbus. I think that was the guy's last name, Arumbus. I really can't pronounce his first name, but I know his last name was Arumbus. So yeah, that fight, Scott Smith looked terrible. That was probably the worst I've seen Scott Smith look. He was out of shape. He wasn't moving as fast as he usually would. And I think that Scott Smith knew that this was the end. So basically what happened is Scott Smith maybe got one submission attempt with the guillotine and basically just got overpowered by Arumbus and got choked out. So there's really nothing much to say about that fight, but you know, Scott Smith probably needs to retire and just call it a career. I mean, you know, he's been the middleweight champion in Strikeforce, so he's obviously accomplished what he wanted to accomplish in being a champion. I mean, you know, he got 2 good wins in his career besides winning the Strikeforce middleweight title. I mean, he knocked out Kung Lee, which was impossible to do back in that period of time when Kung Lee was unstoppable. So, you know, and he was able to beat Robbie Lawler as well. So there you go. You know, Scott Smith, he doesn't have anything to be ashamed of. You know, he could ride off into the sunset knowing that he actually did accomplish something in his career. So yeah. Then what was the next fight? No, it was Miesha Tate and Ronda Rousey. Yeah, once again, Ronda Rousey making short work of an opponent. I kind of had a feeling that Rousey was going to win this fight. If I would have done a video on this card, I probably would have picked Rousey, just for the fact that Tate could not handle her judo / jiu-jitsu abilities if the fight went to the ground. I thought that Rousey would be able to control Miesha Tate, especially in the mount, and probably able to pull off an easy submission. I think if Tate would have found a way to keep the fight standing, I think that would have been her best way to win. But you know, that's how it goes, man. You know, so apparently, you know, Ronda Rousey is kind of, you know, taken over or watched the throne, so to speak, since Cyborg is temporarily out of commission. So you know, we'll just see what's next. You know, we'll see you know, who can really come out and challenge this woman. You know, because apparently from the looks of things, she hasn't found like any real competition or a real matchup for her yet. So maybe the Strikeforce goes out and, you know, maybe looks overseas to find, you know, a true competitive challenger for this lady, because, you know, she's just basically mowing down the whole division pretty much. And they're talking about her facing Sarah Kaufman next. And, you know, I don't think Sarah Kaufman is going to be any better. No disrespect to her, but I mean, you know, you saw what happened with her and Marlos Kunin. I mean, Marlos Kunin, you know, basically handled her pretty good and was able to submit her on top of that. So, ain't no telling what's going to happen when she steps in the ring with Rousey. But, I mean, you know, we'll see. We'll definitely see. But, yeah, that's about it. Once again, check out MMA Mayhem on thebbsn.com. Follow us on Facebook. Also, you can send us your questions, comments, and emails at MMAMayhemATL@gmail.com. And once again, I thank you all for watching, our listeners, and I will see you next week in studio, hopefully. So yeah, this has been another BBSN production.